Kamini, you work with so many people who look successful on the outside, but they're quietly struggling on the inside. Why do you think so many of us hit that wall despite checking all the boxes?
That is such a great question. From my work, what I have realized is that many of us are actually struggling with what I refer to as imposter syndrome. It is on the outside, I feel like I look like I have everything covered, but on the inside, I am dealing with self doubt, dealing with some beliefs around, am I good enough? Am I going to get found out as a fake or a fraud? Because we think that sometimes things have happened for us by a fluke rather than we're actually deserving of it. And so a lot of people, again, on the outside look like they've got it all together, but on the inside, they're struggling with a lot of that self doubt. It's the inner critic that gets us.
Is imposter syndrome new or has it always been around? Because the words imposter syndrome, I feel like that's new, but is it just recently been identified? Does social media make it worse that we're now comparing ourselves to others and feeling less than, where before we could just compare us to our neighbors or whoever's in the carpool line or at the grocery store, and now we can compare ourselves to millions of people at any point in time?
Oh my goodness. So, first of all, I will say that I have a slight issue with the word syndrome because I feel like it pathologizes the whole thing. And really, what it means, it's really just referring to the fact that we feel we have self doubt and our inner critic is beating us up. But to your point, it has been labeled that. And I do think that people are talking about it more and more on social media. And so it's kind of made its way into what I would say pop psychology or, that nature of things. And so we are referring to it more. It's getting called out more. And so I do think that it's top of mind for people like, oh, this is a new thing that we can go out and fix. And really, it's not about fixing, it's about understanding when we're dealing with something like imposter syndrome or that self doubt. It's about creating space to understand what's coming up for you. And oftentimes, it is from comparison. And I do think, and I don't feel like social media is the bane of all existence. Like there's stuff, I was just talking to a client before we hopped on and we were talking about how we can get news from social media now, right? So it's not like it is all bad, but it does invite a lot more comparison and comparison at our fingertips, right? Even using your examples, oh, we would go to the grocery store and maybe that's where comparison would happen. But these phones are with us like in our pocket constantly, which means that we have comparison at our fingertips pretty much 24/7. So I do think that it does add to that imposter syndrome or the idea of the inner critic telling us that we're not good enough, we're not measuring up. Oh, they've got it. They've got themselves put together better than how we have ourselves put together, even though what we're really seeing is somebody's highlight reel, because that's what's out there on social media, not necessarily what's happening behind the scenes.
Well, imposter syndrome does sound so much better. Like I'm suffering from imposter syndrome than like, I just don't think I'm good enough. Like putting
Totally.
a
Yeah.
nice name
Yeah.
on it does make it sound, it's very legit. It sounds a whole lot better. Like we're elevating our self-worth issues. Right.
No, you're absolutely right. It's like, oh, I've got something, right? So like now I'm like, I'm dealing with this thing versus like, yeah, I'm just self-worth. I don't feel like I'm good enough, which yeah, you're right. It doesn't sound as great.
It's not as fancy, I guess, or there's not as much sparkle around it. But you're your coaching dives deep into limiting beliefs. So, I mean, imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs, do they go hand in hand? And what are some of the more common beliefs your clients have and that they need to unlearn? And what healthier truths do you replace them with?
Yeah, so they really do kind of dance together in terms of imposter syndrome and the limiting beliefs, because imposter syndrome is the result of some of these limiting beliefs. And the common ones that my clients are up against are, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not worthy enough. Like I mentioned before, I got here by a fluke. It was just random luck that I'm having the successes I'm having. And those beliefs, if we run our lives by them, right? They're the ones in the subconscious running the show. It does keep us playing small. And so your question about how do we like move through them, it really is, first of all, becoming aware of the limiting belief, because we can't do anything about it if we're not even aware of it. And once we become aware, the second part is getting to this place of acceptance. And I don't mean acceptance as in, okay, this is great, I love it. It's more radical acceptance. Okay, this is what I'm dealing with. And then we start taking action and saying, well, what's actually true about me today? Like for instance, the people who are dealing with imposter syndrome at work, it's, well, what's actually true about the position that you're in? Is it really true, absolutely true, that you got there by a fluke? Or have you actually put in the work? Have you been working diligently? Have you been, crafting and honing in on your expertise? Because a lot of times, again, if we're operating with this limiting belief, if I don't deserve this or I'm not good enough, that's the one that's leading the show versus, okay, what's actually true is I have been working. I've been putting in the effort. I've been learning. I've been challenging myself. Oh, this makes sense. Yes, I am worthy of this role that I have.
Do you find that there's a common characteristic or upbringing, or there's just a common thread between a lot of your clients and, they have and a limiting belief that they have? Like, is it maybe the way they grew up? They may have not grown up with money or whatever it is. Do you find like kind of some commonality between a lot of your clients?
Well, my clients, I tend to work with a lot of high achieving clients, right? People who have really pushed themselves. So some of them are perfectionists, some of them are, I do work with a lot of people pleasers, partially because this is like my story too. So we kind of tend to flock towards those that we know, and I feel like I can really help them. But the commonalities, it does come from either a cultural upbringing, familial upbringing. So I mean, what I mean by that is family of origin. Sometimes it is societal, the messages that we're receiving from society, but those, and then also our own personality will have a part in it as well. And so those threads will lead into some of these beliefs. But like I mentioned, the common ones really are, I'm not good enough. I hear time and time again. That's a really common one. I'm not deserving is another one. And I'm not smart enough. Because again, if we've been pushing ourselves throughout lives, especially with high achievers, we get to a goal and then it's what's next. And so there's not really a slowing down of actually appreciating and acknowledging how far we've come. It's always about, I got to do more and more and more. And so that feeds that limiting belief of it's still not enough or I'm not smart enough.
The acknowledging part of it really resonates with me because I find that's often the case with me is that if something good happens or I achieve a goal, you hear all the time, well, you have to celebrate your wins, or like, what are you going to do to treat yourself? And it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you have to acknowledge it. And I oftentimes I'm like, okay, yeah, great. On to the next. Like I set this goal.
Mm-hmm.
I did what I was supposed to do. Now I'm going to go on and keep on keeping on. What do you find that, people that have imposter syndrome or something, they can't celebrate their successes? Like, does that feel outside their comfort zone?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's almost as if they don't even they struggle with even acknowledging that they got to that goal because it's almost like they don't either believe that they deserve it or they don't believe that that people, it's almost like being, I'm gonna get found out as a fake or a fraud, right? So they really struggle with acknowledging, wow, I actually did achieve this goal that I set out for, and celebrating themselves, because that also feels foreign and it's really uncomfortable. I myself am a chronic nexter. I call myself out for it all the time. It's like, oh, great, I got to this goal. And now it's like on to the next, just like you were mentioning. And I've learned to slow down and be like, I can set the next goal, but first, let me acknowledge how far I've come and the fact that I have achieved this thing that I set out to do. And it's not about being selfish or self centered and being like, oh my gosh, I'm the greatest person in the world. It's just taking some time to acknowledge, wow, I've put in this effort and now I've gotten here. And I'm going to just acknowledge that. I mean, that's what we would do as parents for our kids, to be like, acknowledge yourself. We should offer the same compassion to ourselves.
You bring up kids, and it is what we just went to a my eighth graders in National Junior Honor Society, and they had the ceremony last night, and she was getting her cord that she'll wear at graduation, and then they were inducting new kids in, and there's a lot of them, and it was like, they go and the kids run the ceremony, and it's so adorable and nice, and they take it so seriously, and it's lovely, and then they start reading every name, and it's like, okay, we're in it now. Like, we're in it. Let's get comfy. They start, and it's like, my daughter turned. It's like, why do they have to read every name? I'm like, because look at all the things that they had to do to get here. So that's their second to be acknowledged for it. And we get dressed up and we go to the ceremony and we go to dinner afterwards to celebrate it and enjoy that moment and recognize how hard they worked. And it's funny, we if you think back in when you were a child, like, yes, we had that stuff all the time. Like there's always awards banquets and senior nights and inductions and all of that stuff, and then it kind of just stops, right? After college graduation, it stops. And now it's up to us as adults to take that minute, because no one's doing it for us, right? No one's throwing the ceremony and forcing everyone to get dressed up and hearing your name called. But we're used to that. We are used to that as a society, but no one's doing it. We're not doing it. Now it's up to us to stop and pause and you do whatever it is you need to do to acknowledge the good thing that you just achieved.
Absolutely. And that's such a great point. We do it for our kids, like you mentioned. We do it all the way through. And you're right. We get to college, and then after that graduation, that's it generally stops. And we really do. I mean, sure, in businesses, there'll be reviews and maybe some accolades with a raise or maybe a promotion. But again, it's very private. And so it is important for us as individuals to do that for ourselves, offer that for ourselves. Because if we don't, we end up just chronically going on to the next thing, and we're not acknowledging all the steps along the way. And that's where the inner critic and the self-doubt really creeps in, because we're not paying attention to how far we've come and it doesn't feel like it's enough.
If someone suffers from imposter syndrome, or just not feeling like they're good enough, or the limiting beliefs, when do you see that start to kick in? Right. And I wonder, and I'm thinking out loud here, is there a correlation between the formal recognition events stopping and the imposter syndrome limiting beliefs creeping in? Right. It does. When do we see that start? Because a lot of kids, they think they can do anything, right? They're super confident. They believe in themselves, but then if adults look back at what they did when they were children, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Or I can't believe I thought I could do that, or something like. So when do you see that imposter syndrome or self-doubt start to creep in?
Well, that's such a great question. And I have the blessing of getting to work with teenagers all the way through mature adults. And I would say that teenagers, what we're really dealing with there is it's self doubt, but it's more self esteem, right? They haven't really come into who they are as a person. I would say the imposter syndrome, if I were going to track it back, which is why I said this is such a great question, because I don't think anybody's ever asked me this before, I would say, yes, I see a correlation with the young adults who have left college and are now out on their own, because they don't have that external validation that they were getting when they were younger, right? That external validation with our parents who are living with us, or, support system that's right there with us, or even the school, or even our friends, right? We have it constantly. We're getting that feedback constantly from this external place. So we almost become slightly dependent on that external feedback, and we're not building this muscle of internal feedback, which is something that I work with my younger clients on. Is let's have, look, what's that self-talk about? Can we build this internal feedback? Because when we do get out of the university, if that's the path that we go on, when we're out on our own, it doesn't even have to be university. It's whenever that ends for us and we're now out on our own, we have to learn to depend on ourselves to give us that feedback, because we're not going to always get it from that external place.
That makes so much sense. And in the adult world, a lot of your compensation can be based off of performance, right? Or if you think you're undercompensated, then that could, if you don't feel good enough, or your compensation then determines how you feel as an adult, because like that's the only measurement, that's the only like award system, is what you're getting paid or what you're earning. So that then might create like a weird relationship with money, or feeling I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve this. Or if you get a big raise and it's like, whoa, this feels really weird, because like I maybe I do a good job, but good job at my job, but maybe not that good. Like, I'm not that, I'm not that good, or yeah, I do deserve. So how does money then all flow into the imposter syndrome, self-doubting?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, because I've seen it with my clients on both ends, right? I've had a client who has received a really amazing raise, and we were spent a whole coaching session around, did I really do enough for that? Like, what do I deserve that? And we actually had to go back and say, okay, what's really true? Let's reflect on the past year and let her see, wow, like, no, I really am, I am really good at my job, first of all. And also I am deserving. But then I've had the other end of the spectrum where maybe they didn't receive the higher raise, right? And they take it and they make it mean I am not good enough at my job, when in fact the reality is, oh, our company has this whole dynamic happening with profit, and they maybe don't have the ability to give the same ratio of raises that they've done in the past. But because the experience is my worth is equal to the dollar amount that I'm getting in my raise, and we correlate those two, then if I'm not getting that raise, it must mean that I'm not good at my job. And we have to back it up and say, what else is happening? What else is true besides just my performance? I mean, sure, maybe I'm not saying we don't do some self-reflection and just say, well, what can I learn from this? Is there something I missed? But a lot of times it's that we're not taking into account what's happening for the company as a whole, and we make it about ourselves, and that feeds that imposter syndrome.
And I think, you talk about the importance of gratitude in financial matters. So, how can cultivating gratitude impact one's financial decision? Because in that scenario you said with your client, it's almost just like, well, let's show some, like, let's be gracious for it. Let's be appreciative. And that, by just starting it off that way, it almost makes the walls come down, right? As far as all of her concerns and issues, and I didn't deserve this, and I didn't, I did I do enough to earn all of this? Expressing gratitude first, I feel like, would help to break down a little bit of those walls.
Absolutely. I think that gratitude and a gratitude practice in so many aspects of our life are a power move. I often say that using a gratitude practice builds the optimistic outlook, but I love what you just said. Gratitude also brings down walls. It softens us. It allows us to say, okay, this is actually, I can appreciate this. This is a right thing in this moment. And it helps us then be able to, it almost settles our nervous system, is the way that I look at it. And then we're almost like, as we're calmer, we're able to look at it with a different lens. And I truly believe that how we look at something and our mindset around it is such a huge game changer. And so by practicing gratitude and saying, okay, I'm just really thankful. I'm really appreciative of not just the raise, but of even the opportunities that I've been given. I'm appreciative of how I've shown up, right? So we go through like a full gratitude practice of not just the money, but how I've shown up, who I've been in this role, right? And so now we're looking at it from a totally different perspective than the I don't deserve this.
Gratitude is an interesting concept because it's more than just saying thank you, right? And when, like, we teach, like, say thank you, say thank you. Someone gives you something, say thank you, and it almost makes it like meaningless. It's for the giver to it's important for the giver to hear thank you, right? If they give you something, thank you, because if you don't say thank you, it's rude or what have you. But that's way different than gratitude, than being grateful for something. So, how do we implement gratitude into just like everyday situations, money or not? How do we, like, is it reflection? How can we become more grateful?
I have, it's so funny because when I first started doing my coaching practice and even implementing a gratitude practice, I too was like, I'm thankful for, right? And I had to learn to shift the language around it. And instead, I started challenging myself to say, okay, in the last 24 hours, what are things that I can appreciate? Or what was the right things, right? The one right thing. And I don't mean right as in right or wrong, but like, even in the midst of this really tough day, what is something that went okay, right? And so it really is about showing appreciation for even the little things. Like, for instance, I'm really appreciative. that my dogs are not barking right now. Right. And it's really pushing yourself to have moments of appreciation and acknowledgement, but also what we're doing is we're being mindful and present focused rather than looking and ruminating over something that happened in the past or future tripping. We're coming back to, I'm really appreciative that in this moment, I am acknowledging that this is something right that's happening. And I can just honor that in this moment.
It really is like retraining your brain to think a certain way. I mean, you said, I'm appreciative my dogs are not barking. And it's like, yeah. But it's instead of being like, oh, thank goodness they're not barking, or, when we started this call, I said, I'm going to have background noise because there's work going on in my house right now. And I looked at it as a negative, but instead look at it as like, wow, I'm really grateful that I can work from home. I have the most
Yeah.
flexibility that I am home right now. And we're having this conversation that I'm able to have work done to my house for improvements. So, and I mean, a little bit of it is probably a little bit we might be cusping on toxic positivity, right? Because it is a
Mm-hmm.
you, right. We're cusping, but it is good to say like, oh, this is a good thing. This is a good thing that's happening right now, and being appreciative for it in that moment. It just I think makes you more aware of what's going on.
Yes, and just to just lean off of what you just said, I think we would be toxic positive if we said, like, we were like, oh, this noise is wonderful. I love hearing the banging in my house, which is different than, I really appreciate the fact that these individuals are here helping to improve the house, which is, there's a slight difference in that, right? But you're right. We have to be aware of when we're just toxic positivity, and totally made up that word, when we're just dancing there because now we're just covering up something, versus
Right.
it really frustrates me that I have to listen to the hammering, and I'm appreciative that we have this ability to improve our house, right?
Yes.
Because now we're
Yes.
actually acknowledging what's happening and also saying this is the part that I'm grateful for.
Yes, that's good. That's good because the sounds are not lovely, and I'm not enjoying hearing them. However, there is a silver lining to all of this right
There you
now.
go.
So, kind of on that with like retraining our brain almost and trying to look at things a little bit differently, how do past experiences and upbringing shape going, we're talking about money, this is
Mhm.
everyone's talking about money, so how does a past experience and upbringing shape one's current relationship with money, and what steps can be taken to reframe the negative perceptions that we do have?
Yeah. And I've experienced this myself. I think that our upbringing has a huge impact because as we go through our upbringing, we are having experiences and we're hearing messages around money. It's impossible, I think, to really avoid that. And we, as we're younger, we're internalizing it. So even to just call myself out, like I remember being, my parents are immigrants, I'm first generation American. I remember hearing just verbiage around how difficult it was to make money and just the stressors that came with it. And as a young individual, I internalized that as like money's super hard, and so I created a story for myself around just you got to work really hard, and even when you work really hard it may still not be enough. There's that not enoughness limiting belief again, right? And so then that shapes how we then show up in our adulthood, because those are the beliefs that are running this show. And so a lot of times we're dealing with a scarcity mindset where it's like there's never enough, no matter how. And this was again, no matter how much I work, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. The only way through that I really see that can make a long lasting changes is, again, it's about awareness, acceptance, and then taking action. But with that scarcity mindset, it really is around understanding this is the belief that I've had. So for me, it was about owning the story of I'm going to work really hard and it's still never going to be enough. Own that story, but then also own the fact that I can shift that. I can write a different story for myself. And it comes down to, what am I going to put my energy into that I believe? What is it that I'm going to say is actually true for me? And also, does work have to be hard, or can I actually enjoy my work? And so I've created an entire practice where I love my work more than anything. I love the people that I get to work with. I look at it as a blessing. And so I've shifted the story around work is hard and it's never enough, because I've also realized that was that scarcity mindset versus saying, I have enough for what I need. And you know what? Here's the thing. If I feel like there's something else that I want or that I need, I'm going to just lean more in. I'm going to lean more into what I love doing. It doesn't become I have to work. It's I choose. I choose to engage in this, which is a totally different way of approaching it. It says you're still needed.
Muted. Sorry, everything just froze on me for a second there, and I couldn't even unmute myself to tell you I was frozen. Okay. So, sorry, let me get back. So you've kind of alluded to this already, but what is something you've had to unlearn about yourself to become more aligned with your truth? You kind of alluded to how you've had to unlearn stuff with money, but what in general have you had to unlearn in order for you to, pursue what you're doing right now with your clients or your messaging? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I had to unlearn a handful of things. So I had to unlearn what I shared about money. I also had to unlearn I'm a people pleaser by nature. I had to unlearn that there was a story around I need to overgive, I need to overfunction, I need to constantly take care of others because I somehow am responsible for their happiness and their, there's a difference between contributing to somebody's well-being versus feeling ultimately responsible for it. So for me, it was unlearning that. It was also unlearning that I had to be perfect and that there was this place of good enough where you could, do your best, and that's actually quite fine. So for me, that was a big one. So you take the unlearning of the scarcity, unlearning of the people pleasing, unlearning of the perfectionism. Is it still a work in progress? Absolutely, because we're human and there's always new levels. And I feel like we're onions, right? We're constantly peeling. It's like, oh, there's another layer of this. And that was also something I needed to unlearn, was that, it's like, oh, I'm going to get there. And I think that's part of personal development and self growth, is that you kind of get to this place of acceptance of, oh, well, there's this constant up leveling. So there's going to be something else that I'm going to choose to work on. Not even, I'm intentionally not using the word have to, because I feel that when we say have to or ought to, it's very fear based. So we're going to choose to. I'm going to choose to work on this next level.
What came first, the chicken or the egg? Did you realize all of this stuff about yourself prior to your coaching, or did you learn this through your coaching when you said, "Hey, I got a lot. I've some things in common with my clients."
Yeah, for me, it was doing the self work first. It was learning about that and then recognizing that not only do I have an affinity, I've always had an affinity for just supporting people and helping people. It's just in my nature. But I realized, wow, personal experience, I can absolutely take this and pay it forward. I do believe that nothing happens in our lives for, there's always a deeper reason behind it. We may not know what it is. And for me, it was, wow, I've learned a lot and I'm continuing to learn a lot, and I can pay it forward and help others who might be struggling with some of the same things that I've struggled with.
Your book, is it or
Om,
Om?
om,
Om. Okay.
om. Mm-hmm.
Your book Your book Life's Gentle Reminders About Being Present and Finding Joy in Small. Hold on, let me do that all over again. Your book Life's Gentle Reminders is about being present and finding joy in small moments. So how does presence help to make better money choices?
Oh, it makes a huge difference, right? Because if we're presently aware and we're not ruminating over past, especially past mistakes or what we deem past mistakes, or we're worrying about the future, we're constantly in the future like future, I call it future tripping, right? Where we're constantly worried about, well, what if, what if, what if? But we come back to the present moment. It allows us to say, okay, this is the information I have today, and I'm going to make the best choice I have with the information I have. And we don't get stuck in fear, because a lot of times if we're future tripping, it's all fear based. It's like the what ifs. Or we get stuck in rumination where it's like, well, I made that mistake. So it's fear again that comes into play, where it's like, well, I don't want to make that mistake again. So and then it causes paralysis, and then we don't make money choices for ourselves. I find this happens a lot with people with investing, for instance. They get scared and it's like, well, I made that mistake, I can't do that again. Versus coming back to the present moment. This is what I know. This is the information I have. And now I can make this choice. And we're, even if it's the outcome that I'm not happy with, I will then be in that present moment and make a different choice with the information I have at that time. I can hear you.
How does presence also help us as far as non-money choices, just finding the joy in the day to day, not reflecting so much on the past, but also, we're considering the future. So how can we be more present right now?
I feel that mindfulness and present moment awareness is a huge game changer. And for somebody like myself who spent a lot of time like ruminating over past mistakes or missed choices or what I deemed were mistakes, what that does is it just sends us into this overthinking spiral. And then we're missing out on what's happening right now. The other part that I know I have dealt with as well is constantly worrying about the what ifs, the future. And when we do that again, we're missing out on, especially as a parent. I have 5 kids. And so I know that when I would future trip, I would miss out on what was happening right in front of me in those moments. The moments where we're in the car, going to carpool, that's where so much happens in those conversations. And if I was constantly worrying about the what ifs or the future, I'm not present in that conversation. And those are golden moments. Those are golden conversations. And so it shifts everything, not just money choices. It shifts things in our relationships because we're actually building these deeper connections with the people in our lives. It shifts just our own stress levels. If we're constantly thinking about the past or we're worrying about the future, our cortisol levels are just through the roof. So from a health perspective, it's an absolute shifter as well. That's why mindfulness is taking, I think, mainstream conversation at this point. We had talked about meditation before, but we're just realizing that mindfulness, just being in the moment, is a huge game changer.
Where's the line that's between, ruminating over the past, focusing on it, or woulda, coulda, shoulda, and learning from it? Like, how can we catch ourselves to be like, okay, you're focusing way too much on the past?
I think the key for that is paying attention to when the judgment voice comes into play, right? If we're thinking about the past, there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda. Oh my gosh, can't believe you made that choice. We're in judgment versus, okay, that wasn't the outcome I wanted. What did I learn? Like if we're asking ourselves that question, what did I learn or how can I grow from this? What information can I take from this? Now we're in the growth zone. Now we're saying, okay, I'm not ruminating. I'm not stuck in the past. I'm saying this did happen. I'm getting to this place of acceptance, but then it's also, and what can I take from it to move myself forward? That's how we know that we're either moving forward or we're stuck in the past.
Someone that you've identified yourself as a people pleaser, right? You've said that that's it. That's an issue. You're responsible for everyone's happiness. Not that you contribute to it. It's your job, right?
Yes.
Again, how do we catch ourselves doing that? Right. Especially as a mother, you just want your children to be happy. You want your spouse or partner to be happy. You just want everyone to be happy and satisfied and feel good about everything, but you can't control it. You can contribute to it, but you're not responsible for it. So again, how do we catch ourselves when we're becoming like blaming ourselves or putting that responsibility on us?
I would say the biggest ways that we can start catching it are one, when we start to feel resentful. A lot of times, people pleasers will report that they're resentful because they're not getting that feedback or that recognition from somebody that they're over giving and over functioning for. That's number one. Number two is also paying attention to your own energy levels. When you're starting to feel completely spent and worn out, it's a good indication that maybe you're doing a little too much, or maybe you're putting more effort into how someone else is doing versus paying attention to your own self and where your boundaries are. And I do say that that's the biggest shift for individuals who are people pleasers, is figuring out, where are my boundaries? Where am I going to draw the line? Before I say, and also before I say yes, let me take a breath and figure out whether I really want to say yes to this or not.
That's a big one for me. Is I'm so quick to like, let me look, like my kids ask me, can I do this? Can I do this? And I'm so quick to say yes. And I'm like, let me look at my phone. Let me see what we have going on, or let me see what's going on. And just, but they're so used to like me saying yes that I've caught myself now, because I've gotten us into some sticky situations where I've said yes to them doing something or whatever. And so yes, yes, the breath is very powerful in many situations. I've learned is just let me take a beat, and it also teaches you if how quickly you've used to answer. If someone's like, "What? Why aren't you answering me?" Like, holy mackerel, let me put some air in my lungs before I say something back to you.
Yes, it teaches us a lot, right? When somebody has a reaction because we're not answering as quickly, and it's like, oh, wow, okay, I've taught them that I do answer immediately. Interesting.
That is so true, and I think that just goes back to the mindfulness and take the mindfulness and taking a beat and being more aware of kind of what's going on around you and being in the moment more, I think is super helpful. So how do people with social anxiety or people pleasing techniques, or taking on responsibility for things that aren't their responsibility, how does that impact someone's ability to advocate for themselves financially, whether negotiating a raise or setting boundaries with children or a partner? But how do all these people pleasing, the people pleasingness that we could have, how does that impact us with our money?
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question, because it has a direct correlation, right? If we're a people pleaser, we're worried about the other person. So let's just take your example of a raise. We're worried how our boss is going to perceive us, and we don't want our boss to be upset with us, and we don't want them to think negatively of us, and we feel like we need to make sure that they're okay. And so we dim our voice, and we don't ask, we don't say, we don't speak up, and it'll absolutely impact our money, because we're not then seeking out what we actually really honestly deserve at that point, right? Because we're so afraid of how the other person is going to react. Our people pleasing tendency keeps our voice quiet, and we don't speak up. It happens all, just, this is a random thing to say, but like, even just think about going to a restaurant and you don't get the food that, it's not prepared properly. People pleasing. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to make anybody upset. I'm going to keep quiet. Like, small amount of money, but still, you're not getting what you paid for, and yet you're losing out on that as well.
You're not getting what you paid for. It impacts the rest of your night. When you go back, when you think of the restaurant, you're going to think of that experience. You may end up being mad at yourself afterwards, because it's like, why didn't I just say something? You don't want to upset the person. That's so true. And on so many, that's a great example, because there's so many levels to it. You don't go out to dinner every night. You deserve one. You should get what you ordered. Like, that's not crazy to say, I wanted XYZ and I expect to receive that in return. Like, that's not crazy. That's not abrasive. That's not anything. Right.
Yep.
But then to say, well, I don't want them to be mad at me. And it's like, but if we just look at the facts, like you didn't get what you asked for. Like that's not you're not being mean, or they're not going to hate you afterwards by just saying, hey, you brought the wrong thing out, or like was the wrong thing typed in, or I just didn't get what I asked. Like, and your dinner could be sitting in the kitchen waiting for you. Like, and they just grabbed the wrong
Right.
plate. Right. But
Right.
then like your
Yes.
whole night is different, and you go into this whole spiral. It's so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had it just this morning. I'm going through this whole like, journey with, I mentioned that the renovation, and all, you have to move a lot of stuff out when you're having a renovation, and you start looking at your stuff, and it's like, I spent money on this and it's there and it's never been used, and now I'm just donating it, or I'm throwing it away. And then you're getting mad at yourself and going through this whole
Mm-hmm.
judgment of, you spent your money on that was a waste, there could have been so much more you spent your money on. And so I've been going through this like mental gymnastics with myself throughout this. And my daughter came, and so I'm just trying to like have less, live with less.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to be clutter eventually in my house, and all of that, and do I need to spend the money on something that's going to be clutter? And so just this morning, my oldest handed me a picture form and for softball, and it's like playing high school softball and pictures. And I'm like, and the people pleasing part of me, or worried about everyone, would say, okay, let me pay the $55 for this picture of you in your softball uniform, when I could just take it with my phone, and we have the same memory from it, right? But
Right.
and I just look at it, I'm like, do you need me to buy these pictures? She's like, no, like, I'm just giving it to you because I told you to give. So, but if I didn't ask that, I would have then bought the picture, then I'd have this picture, and then it needs to be in a frame, then it needs to be on the shelf because I paid for it. So I might as well. And it creates like this whole like spiral where me saying like, do you want me to get a picture? Like, how do you feel about this? And
Yes.
just by asking that, it just eliminated a whole scenario created in the,
Yes.
in today and in the future. So I think just being more direct also is helpful, and being direct isn't being mean or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just saying something that's on your mind.
It's using your voice and opening up dialogue. And that's really what a lot of this comes down to, especially with people pleasing. It's about having communication.
I had a question from your podcast. Now I totally lost it. Because I want to bring up your podcast, right? Is your podcast
Yeah.
active and all of
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The title of your podcast says it all. Rise up, live joy your way. What's one small ritual or habit that brings you joy no matter how hectic life gets?
I love that question. The one small habit that I do is every morning I take at least 15 to 20 minutes of just quiet time before anyone else in my house wakes up. And it's just my time for myself. Whether it's I'm like walking, I'm meditating, I'm just sitting and reading a book, drinking my coffee. It doesn't matter. It's just my time.
And with 5 children, that has to be pretty early in the morning.
It is. It is. But you know what? I'll take it.